Yes, it's Charlie Danger, private detective. Charlie Danger, defender of the Constitution. And now, Charlie Danger, private detective.
Security cameras focused on Dr. Heinrich von Totenkopf as he walked down the long, empty corridor with her briefcase full of reports in hand. His footsteps echoed as she made his way down the hall towards the red door and the two black uniformed men who guarded it. The door opened, allowing him to pass through and into a dimly lighted office. She stood there in silence before the huge oaken desk. After several minutes, the man behind the desk looked up from his papers.
My dear Dr. Totenkopf, I have several questions I would like for you to answer for me.
Yes, mein Lieber,
replied Totenkopf as he nervously seated himself, her bookcase in her lap.
You are aware, I take it, that Charlie Danger and his present band of cohorts have infiltrated any town?
All of a sudden, Totenkopf began to sweat.
yes, mein Lieber. I am presently their midst of devising an ingenious trap for them.
I see. I would take it then that you are monitoring their activities?
Totenkopf was definitely sweating.
Yes, mein Lieber, but...
No. You are never to say but to me. Do you understand? You have lost track of them, haven't you? I will not stand for it. Do you see?
Totenkopf jumped to attention.
They have somehow eluded us, mein Lieber.
Said Totenkopf with a click of her heels.
You must find them. Do you understand? Find them and deal with them. Do you see?
Yes, mein Lieber.
And while you're at it, you may wish to inquire into the whereabouts of your nephew Jaime Lipschitz.
Yes, mein Lieber.
It may surprise you to find that he has abandoned his duties and has turned up missing. You see?
Yes, mein Lieber.
I want you to find him and bring him to me so that I can have the pleasure of kicking
Yes,
his
mein Lieber.
ass personally. Do you hear?
Yes,
Do
mein
you
Lieber.
understand?
Yes, mein Lieber.
Get out of my sight, you ignorant baboon.
Yes, mein Lieber.
And you had better not let the situation get out of hand. I expect you to deal with Danger and his friends, and I expect for you to locate that idiot Lipschitz and bring him to me.
I will see to these matters at once, mein Lieber.
The great leader turned his attention back to the many papers on the desk before him. It was time to get the hell out of there. George Burns, Gracie Allen, Gomer Pyle, and Fat Elvis managed to flag down a taxicab, an actual checker that had last seen service on the streets of New York City. That, according to its driver, Bruce Lee as Kato from the 1960s television series, The Green Hornet.
Well, golly,
said Gomer Pyle, who had climbed into the front seat.
you know, I used to watch your show all the time, 'cause I thought you was much better than that other fella on there, and I liked your car, the Black Beauty. Well, that was really a Lincoln Continental, 'cause I could tell them kind of things about an automobile.
How extremely interesting, Cato replied.
My name's Gomer Powell, and I'm from Mayberry, and these are my friends George and Gracie and old Fat Elvis here, and we even got Lassie too, but she's up inside the umbrella,
said Gomer with his trademark grin. Did you have a destination in mind, sir? Cato inquired somewhat impatiently. We could all use some meats and a bath and a bed. Got any suggestions? I was sitting in the middle of the back seat with George and Gracie on either side of me. I could see Cato's eyes in the rearview mirror, and they were staring right back at me. Elementary, Cato replied. I know just the place. The taxi pulled out, and we were on our way. Thankfully, silence took over the cab, but something was bugging me, although I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. Maybe it was the way Cato kept looking at me through the rearview mirror. Maybe it was something in his voice or his mannerisms, but I could sense that something wasn't right. I was sure the guy wasn't Bruce Lee at all. And then he started talking. Are you the famous detective Charlie Danger? Do I look like Charlie Danger? Thank you very much. You can drop the Fat Elvis routine. I know that you are none other than Charlie Danger. Look, it ain't healthy to be poking your nose around where it doesn't belong, pal. All I could see were his eyes behind the mask. You are all in extreme danger. Totenkopf is aware of your presence and is preparing a trap for you. Look, pal, I don't take advice from strangers, I replied as I pulled my .38 and pressed the barrel up against the back of his head. That is, unless they're willing to come clean. We were just turning into a hotel parking lot. There's no time for that now. You must go. You are being observed. I shall make further contact with you later, Cato said as he pulled up and stopped the cab. Under the circumstances, we had no other alternative but to comply. We all got out of the car. As we stood there in front of the Salty Towers Hotel and watched the taxicab drive away, I couldn't help but feel like there was something strangely familiar about that driver. Obviously, the man was not Bruce Lee as Cato from the Green Hornet. But then, who the hell was he? What, if anything, did he have to do with the plot line? And as far as that went, what the hell had happened to the plot line? There was still a plot line, wasn't there? Good afternoon and welcome to Salty Towers. Basil Salty's the name, at your service. How may I have the pleasure of serving you today? The man behind the reception counter was tall, thin, and extremely British in his speech and mannerisms. Yeah, look, we're tired and we're hungry. We need to freshen up, I said. We'll need rooms for a couple of nights. Might I presume that you are from out of town? Visitors to our quaint little community? Inquired Basil Salty. Yeah, that's it. We're visiting, I said. You see, normally we don't have many visitors through here at all. What with this being a closed community and all, in fact, you're the first we've had here in ages. No visitors, said George Burns. How do you run a hotel without any visitors? Well, you see, that's simple. Look, pal, we're tired. How about our rooms? Oh, right. Excellent. I guess you'll be demanding a Waldorf salad next. Suddenly, Basil Salty had a horrifying realization. His face turned as white as a ghost. My God! You're not Germans, are you? Hotel inspectors? Please tell me you're definitely not psychiatrists. Look, we just drove out from Vegas. I'm Elvis Presley. Can't you see? This is George Burns, Gracie Allen, and Gomer Pyle. We're all famous entertainers, pal, and don't you forget it. Well, thank God we've got that cleared up. You wouldn't believe the sort of riffraff that comes through here sometimes. It's simply unbelievable. Sometimes, when I start to think about how I began with this... We stood there in awe as the man proceeded to babble on and on about mounted moose heads and a large garden gnome. Obviously, this guy was an unfortunate victim of Totenkopf's mind control experimentation. Excuse me, I interrupted. Our rooms? The man's mind seemed to jerk back to reality. Oh, yes, of course. Just one moment. Basil Salty rang the bell on the counter. Manuel? We stood looking at each other. Manuel! Never mind. He's from Barcelona. I'm afraid you can't get decent help these days. It'd actually be a good deal easier to train a monkey. Manuel! At last, Manuel made his entrance. I come, Mr. Salty. I'm here now. Manuel, I want you to take these people up to rooms 7 and 8. ¿Qué? 7 and 8. Take these people up to rooms 7 and 8. ¿Qué? No comprende. Salty rolled his eyes in frustration. Take people up. No, never mind. I'll do it myself. Thank you so very, very much. Gracie the umbrella and I took room number 7. George and Gomer took number 8 across the hall. Finally left alone in the privacy of our rooms, we each took advantage of the amenities and made ourselves at home. Lassie was glad to get out of the umbrella, and it felt good to kick back and relax for a couple of hours. I was just starting to feel like my old self again when there was a knock on the door. I was flopped down on the bed. Jane was in the shower, and the dog was sniffing at the door. "Who is it?" I asked as I reached for my gun. "It is expert aviator and a humble detective," replied the voice of Charlie Chin. "Please to open door." I opened the door. Chin and Phleye entered the room. "Very interesting," said Chin as he looked the place over. "This room is exact duplicate of a room across the hall." "Never mind that now. We've got to figure out how we're going to get to Totenkopf and put him out of business." At that point, Jane came strolling out of the bathroom wearing nothing but a bath towel. She proceeded to flop herself down on the couch. She picked up a remote and casually flicked on the television set. The television set! In a flash, I ran over, picked up the TV set, and with one great heave, I tossed it through the window. The sound of breaking glass gave way to the sound of a television set smashing into the ground 3 stories below.
Charlie, what the hell did you do that for? Are you crazy?
You'd do the same thing if you saw what I've seen, baby. I'm talking TV that can literally blow your mind all over the living room ceiling. I'm telling all of you now, we're not taking any chances at any time with any television set. You got that? Not only can these evil monstrosities see and hear, they can communicate too. That's how I actually got to speak to Totenkopf himself.
You spoke to that creep? What did he have to say?
He said he knows we're here and that he would kill us the first chance he gets. That's why we gotta be careful. Any television set at all could turn out to be a killer. Pieces of puzzle begin to show ugly picture. I lit up a lucky strike. We got to keep from getting killed. It's also very important that we find some way of advancing the plot line forward. If we can't do that, then everything else that's taken place so far in this story is absolutely meaningless.
The dog's right. It's time for us to quit playing around and go on the offensive.
Jaime Lipschitz had ditched the flowering plum bush disguise in a dumpster behind the Happy China restaurant. From there he emerged as Clark Kent, mild-mannered reporter for a great metropolitan newspaper. He then made his way to Murphy's Theatrical Supply Emporium to see his friend Marvin Murphy, the man he had confided in and who had supplied him with the Plumbush and Clark Kent disguises. So you actually went through with it? I wasn't sure you would.
What other choice do I have? I cannot take part in Totenkopf's insanity.
Come, we must go down into the basement. I have some really good weed down there. The news brought a smile to Jaime's face.
After all that I've been through today, that is exactly what I am in need of, my good friend.
Marvin locked and hung a closed sign on the front door, and together he and Jaime descended the dark stairs to the basement. They took seats at an old card table, and Marvin lit a candle. I grow this stuff right here in the basement. It's good stuff, huh?
Oy vey, it's very dangerous, though.
It is all that keeps you and I from going crazy, my friend. The THC content in the brain forms a shield against Totenkopf's mind control programming.
I know that. That's why we must get word to the outside world. America must be warned. Totenkopf must be stopped.
Anything in my shop is yours, my friend. I will do all I can to help you.
It is up to you and I alone. You must help me to evade capture, escape from this town, and alert our fellow countrymen. If only there was someone we could trust, someone who could help us.
Come to think of it, said Marvin with a sparkle in his eye, I might know of just such a person. Jaime Lipschitz leapt to his feet.
Please, my friend, you must tell me who is this person of which you speak.
Oy vey, sit down, smoke, I will tell you. Jaime sat back down, and Marvin continued. Yesterday, 2 people and a dog come into my shop looking for disguises. One of them I recognize immediately as the famous detective Charlie Chin. Jaime nearly choked on his joint.
Is that possible?
Of course it's possible. Do you think I'm making this all up? With him was a woman and a dog. I am pretty sure that the woman was Calamity Jane, and the dog was none other than Lassie. Jaime was confused.
Are they not the same domestic terrorists sought after by every agency of the federal government?
They walked out of here disguised as George Burns and Gracie Allen. You must see Gal Burns and Allen. They can lead you to Charlie Danger. I am sure he is working against Totenkopf. Don't you see? It is our only hope.
You're right, my friend. Somehow I must find these people.
Meanwhile, a great crowd of townsfolk had gathered outside of the Anytown Bijou Theater. They'd come to purchase tickets for the grand premiere of an experimental film entitled Soggy Shorts in Orbit by none other than Dr. Heinrich Totenkopf. Actually, they'd been directed to do so through the subliminal programming inserted into the local evening news broadcast. One of those in the crowd was Gracie Allen, who, as Jane Cannery, had watched the local evening news on the TV that Mr. Salty had brought up to replace the one that I sent through the window. In spite of my warnings about TV sets, the daffy dame went right ahead and turned it on anyway. I knew something like that was going to happen. I didn't say anything as she put on her Gracie get-up. She headed out the door without saying a word, just like she was in some kind of trance. That's why I tailed her to the theater. I was surprised to find George Burns and Gomer Pyle standing in line at the ticket box. Apparently, they'd watched the broadcast on the TV evening news in the dining room as they ate their meal. You know, you try to tell people things for their own good, but it goes through one ear and it comes out the other. I followed Gracie into the theater. Inside the darkened hall, I followed Gracie to her seat, and I took one myself a couple of rows behind her. The place was packed. Suddenly, a single spotlight beam illuminated Dr. Totenkopf, who was standing alone at a podium on the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, for your own good and for the betterment of mind control technology worldwide, I now present you my masterpiece, Soggy Shorts in Orbit.
Somehow I knew things were about to get ugly. I realized that this was one big test of a theater-sized version of the microtelelobotomizer. After tangling with one in that poor stiff's living room, I hated to think what a mega-sized one would do if turned loose on a theater full of unsuspecting sheep. I suddenly realized we had to get out of there.
Now, without further ado, I present you the once in a lifetime multisensory bioelectronic total immersion experience, which ultimately will alter their perception and their thought processes to induce a catonic state from which to extract and compress their consciousness for collection into their brainwave matrix.
I couldn't believe it. The audience gave the guy or gal or whatever a standing ovation. The whatever who had just promised to fry their brains, they were cheering and applauding. It was time for action. I reached for my .38 and suddenly realized that I wasn't wearing the Elvis get-up. It had slipped my mind as I followed Gracie out of the room into the bijou. Charlie Danger was right out in the open for all the monitors to see, and so I did what I could because I had no choice. I pulled out my gun and started firing up towards the ceiling and yelling, "The place is on fire! Everybody out!" Suddenly, Gracie Allen appeared from out of nowhere
Charlie?
as the frightened sheep started crowding for the exits. In a flash, the bazooka was out of her purse, shouldered, and then fired up at the projection room. The explosion wreaked devastation, and it ensured that the show would not go on anytime soon. Totenkopf, of course, had escaped at the first sign of trouble, getting lost in the crowd pouring out of the theater exits. It wasn't long before the place was empty, except for two people in the middle of the first row. Gracie and I looked at each other and smiled. It was George Burns and Gomer Pyle. The two of them sat giggling and stuffing their faces with popcorn. Obviously, they had smoked a couple of joints on the way to the theater. "Hello, Gracie. We were ready to jump in and help, but you and Danger seem to have the situation well under control."
Shame on you, George. You've been into my stash in my purse.
My God, Gracie, there must be tons of that stuff in there.
Never mind that now, George. Don't you think it's about time for us to get the hell out of here?
Gracie was right. We had effectively struck the first blow. We had disrupted Totenkopf's experiment, and we had prevented a theater full of unsuspecting sheeple from literally losing their minds.
Yes, you've been listening to Charlie Danger, Private Detective. Tune in next time for the next exciting episode of Charlie Danger, Private